Hello everyone, welcome back for another film review. My name is Adam, and in today's episode we're going to be taking a look at Universal Pictures' 1996 film The Frighteners on Blu-ray from Turbine Studios. The Frighteners was written and directed by Peter Jackson, with writing credit for his wife, Fran Walsh. It was produced by Robert Zemeckis and distributed by Universal Pictures. The music was done by Danny Elfman, and the film was shot on Panavision cameras using Eastman Color 35mm stock. The runtime was 110 minutes, and on a budget of just 26 million, in global box office takings, it took just 29 million, which Universal Pictures, who distributed it, would have deemed that as a failure and a bomb. But Peter Jackson, who directed it, would have deemed it as a success, as it was the very first film that his newly set up company, Weta Digital, handled for all the special effects in the film. The Frighteners is a special effects heavy film, I'd say, with a lot more effects than you probably think. Weta Digital had just been set up, so it had a lot of novice technicians, and engineers and artists. The software was off the shelf with just a couple of pieces that were homebrew. The special effects that were required for the film were compositing the ghosts with the sort of glow of the ghosts around them into the live action footage that was shot separately, as well as creating CGI characters for the Death Reaper, a dog, and a fly, as well as numerous other sequences towards the end of the film. So, it was pretty much a special effects heavy film for a film that really didn't need it. 5 years prior, the film Ghost, which kind of deals with, ghosts interacting with live action, didn't require CGI special effects and just, made do with simple blue screen compositing. The Frighteners took a different approach. They used blue screen compositing for the ghosts, but also a lot of CGI effects were thrown in there as well. In fact, Universal Pictures, the original theatrical release date, was going to be October, and they pushed it forward to July the 19th, cutting short the production of about 4 to 6 months. So Weta Digital actually had to get ILM to help finish off the sequences of the special effects. Now, the music was done by Danny Elfman, and I gotta say, the soundtrack for this film is really nice. It's a classic Danny Elfman soundtrack. There are a couple of pieces that sound like it's from Batman Returns or Darkman, but overall, the music really does fit the tone of the picture, which is kind of a dark humor comedy. Some would call it horror, but it's, I don't think it is a through and through horror. It is meant to be, I would say, a dark humor comedy. It was Peter Jackson's first proper film working with Weta Digital, but his third feature film overall. Now, for the special effects, the way the film was shot, it was filled with live elements shot on 35mm, as well as ghosts shot against blue screen on 35mm, and then digitally composited in. Then a lot of CGI stuff was rendered on the computer to be mixed in with the live action and the ghost footage to create the final print. Now, I couldn't find any information on how the CGI was rendered, but looking at the behind the scenes documentary on the Blu-ray disc, it does look it does look like their monitors aren't like displaying 2K resolution. It does look like they are displaying 1K resolution, so I can't be sure of the resolution of the CGI in this film. It's somewhere between 1 to 2K. In 1996, ILM was rendering computer graphics at 2K resolution, and they were scanning prints into the computer to create a digital internegative, or digital intermediate, to then edit the film and then mix the final print off. So the same thing would have happened for this film, and then once the final edit of all the shots combined, composited together, were put into a digital intermediate 2K file, it would have then been optically printed to a 35mm negative to then go on to produce the theatrical prints. Now, when it came time for the home media versions, which this got released on VHS, VCD, DVD, Laserdisc, and even a Blu-ray, all stemming from the same master. They're the 2K intermediate file would have then been telecast into those various formats for release in 1997. Now, after the film's release in home media, Peter Jackson went on to work on his next project, with Universal Pictures, a remake of their classic horror, King Kong. But in 1998, Sony Pictures released Godzilla, and Universal Pictures were due to release next year, in 1999, The Mummy, and Universal were a bit worried that there was too much competition for King Kong, and they really wanted it to succeed, so they shelved that project for a couple of years, putting Peter Jackson with nothing to do. So to fill his time, he decided to edit together a documentary behind the scenes for the Frighteners. It was only meant to be an hour in length, but it turned out to be 4.5 hours, and it is a stellar documentary on the behind the scenes making of the entire film, from literally the 2-page treatment to the release and everything in between. It gave Universal Pictures an opportunity to re-release The Frighteners as a special edition on Laserdisc for their signature collection, and allowed Peter Jackson to go back to his film to insert a lot of shots that he originally wanted in the theatrical cut. The original runtime of The Frighteners was about 2 hours and 20 minutes, but for the theatrical run, Universal really wanted it trimmed down to less than 2 hours so they can maximize how many people could see it in a day. So 15 minutes was removed from the edit. Now, Universal Pictures given Peter Jackson an opportunity to showcase a director's cut for the Signature Collection Laserdisc, which was released in 1998, featuring the 4.5-hour documentary. It was a really good Laserdisc to pick up, and I did used to have it in my old collection. If you want to buy it on eBay, it goes for like £140 now. It is a bit of a sought-after Signature Collection title. And eventually, obviously, the 3-disc special edition did make its way to DVD in, I believe, 1999. Might have been 2003, can't be sure. But it was basically a carbon copy of the Signature Collection. Now, eventually, it came out on Blu-ray as well. I'm not sure if it was in the form of that special edition. I think it was just the film. But all these versions stemmed really from the theatrical, 2K digital intermediate, except for the director's cut. The director's cut is made up basically of the theatrical cut, 2K digital intermediate on the computer, with all the footage from the 35mm negatives from the camera that were then scanned at 2K into the computer for the missing scenes of the director's cut. All the effects works were finished off, rendered at 2K, and reinserted into the film to create this director's cut, which was on the computer at 2K digital intermediate locked. Now, this never had a theatrical release. So I can't imagine Universal Pictures ever created a 35mm negative optically printed from this digital intermediate. There'd be no reason to. Even for archival reasons, it's on a computer's hard drive archived. There is no reason to spend all the money to put it to 35mm prints. I could be wrong on that, but more than likely it was straight from the computer to the Laserdisc, to the DVD for the release, and then that was done, Fast forward to 2020, and Turbine Studios approached Universal wanting to bring out the Frighteners on both Blu-ray and the new 4K format that had just come out. Universal Pictures accepted their offer and invited them to fly out to Los Angeles to have access to the 35mm negatives of the theatrical cut and the digital intermediate 2K files of the director's cut, And they did. Turbine Studios flew out to Los Angeles, scanned the theatrical cut in 4K, and copied over the 2K files to their own hard drives with the new 4K scan of the theatrical cut, and flew back to Germany, where Turbine Studios is based, to complete the 4K mastering. Now, the 4K restoration, mastering, however you want to put it, wasn't approved or directed by Peter Jackson or the cinematographer, but Peter Jackson consulted with Turbine Studios on the 4K transfer, so more than likely he sent over or faxed over a few notes on this is how I want it to look, and then Turbine Studios would carry those instructions over to the grading of the picture. On the website it says consulted by Peter Jackson, not approved by, so it doesn't actually look like he approved or saw the final grading of the picture. He may have, but their website does say consulted with by Peter Jackson, which means it's a here's what I want you to do, you know. So Turbine Studios get to work grading the picture for the 4K theatrical cut and the upscale from the 2K digital intermediate to the 4K director's cut. They place on whatever they need to do with the HDR and all that, and create the 4K, image file that would then be burned to the Blu-ray. For the Blu-ray release, it literally is taken from that 4K scan or digital intermediate on the PC before the HDR was added, or maybe done after, and basically transcoded down to or compressed down to the Blu-ray. So this Blu-ray is basically an identical version of what the 4K scan is, So let's have a look at what you get inside this release. Now, I didn't buy this from Turbine Studios. It's out of print on their website. It's priced at €35, which I think is around 30 quid for anybody in the UK wanting to buy it. With postage, it probably is about 35, 40 pounds. I bought this off eBay for £30. So I feel like I got a bargain, and I've got some mixed feelings about this release. I have had this on the Signature Collection Laserdisc, the regular Laserdisc, a DVD, and a VHS. I've never had the previous Blu-ray. But I have seen screenshots, and it does just look like the DVD master. But this is a completely new 4K scan master transfer, however you want to put it. So what do you get with the Blu-ray set? Well, obviously you get the box art here of the theatrical poster, except without the "Are we dead yet?" bit. But I love that. I think this is a really interesting, really nice poster. I know Peter Jackson didn't like it, but I do. On the back, you get a mock-up of the newspaper Gazette headline, paper, and it slips out. And you got a steelbook tin with the newly commissioned artwork for the 4K release. There is a bigger edition of the 4K release where it's a 9-box set, and you can either choose this artwork for the front cover or this artwork for the front cover, and whichever one you choose, the other one is what is inside. I don't know if it was the same for this Blu-ray release because I didn't buy it from Turbine, but this is what mine looks like, the old steelbook tin. It also comes with a one sheet with all what is on this disc. Now, Turbine Studios is a German company. They do all their printing in German. So if you buy that big 9-disc set, which the only extra discs apart from this, what you're getting, are obviously you get the 4K director's and theatrical cut, but you also get a 4K or a Blu-ray open matte version, which is meant to be a open matte, which is supposed to be an Academy ratio by 4:3 or 1.33 to 1. This film was shot in 2.35 to 1, and that open matte on that set is actually like 1:7.8 to 1, so it's more fitting to the widescreen TVs, taking the CinemaScope nature of this aspect ratio and just heightening, opening up the heights so it fits your TV, which isn't strictly true in open matte, but you do get to see more of the film, on your set. I don't really see the point in that. It's more of a gimmick, I feel, but for those that have that set, they love it. which means that there is 2 extra discs left over, which I actually don't know what's on that release. I have this, 3-disc Blu-ray release, which is basically a carbon copy of the 3-disc or what was available on the special edition DVD. Now, that for me is a part of the collector's edition Universal Pictures playlist that I'll be doing in the future. So you'll be able to go watch that review of the DVD in that playlist. But for this Blu-ray release, when you pop it open, you get 3 discs. You get the director's cut Blu-ray, you get the theatrical cut Blu-ray, and a bonus disc Blu-ray. The artwork on the Blu-rays is all unique, and there is inside artwork as well. I do quite like the artwork on this. It's pretty cool. The theatrical cut is called Kinnesfang, because it's all printed in German. Now, the only issue I have with this, which to me is I just feel lazy of Turbine Studios, is the menu system for all of these discs, and the write-up on the back here is all written in German. I don't speak or read German, so unfortunately it's very hard for me to look at this with enjoyment, because I have to get my phone out and open up Google Translate and read through that of what it says. If you've got that 9-disc set, it actually came with a book all written in German. I mean, it's kind of selfish from my point of view, my opinion, that Turbine Studios is only releasing this set for their own country and kind of disregarding the 70% rest of the world that speak English. Because at the end of the day, they could have just released a English version and a German version, meaning that, if you live in America or the UK or Australia, you could order the English version and have English writing, English menus, and an English book. As it stands, you got to use Google Translate. It's more of a bugbear, but it's just kind of like they could have done it differently. I do actually think this is a really nice set in terms of its presentation. Unique disc art for each disc. The artwork behind and this artwork is pretty cool, and I love the fact that they've kept the theatrical poster on the front. But what do you get in this set? Well, I don't speak German, so I don't know. But what I do know is on the bonus disc is the 4.5-hour documentary that charts the entire making of this film. And it is a really good documentary. I really honestly feel Peter Jackson is better at making documentaries than actually making films. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, but I've only really seen 3 films by Peter Jackson. The first Lord of the Rings film, this film, and King Kong, and that is it. And all of those films have an extended version, bloating the runtime, meaning he doesn't really like to leave things out, which one person will say is great because you get a really good experience, but then another person could criticize, well, couldn't you tell the story in a shorter, more artistic way to fit like a 2-hour runtime maybe? I don't know. It's not like, this ain't a complaint. This is just an observation. I haven't seen a lot of his films to really see him as a way director, but the behind-the-scenes features that he produces are excellent. This is the best version, of a behind-the-scenes featurette that I feel is on any release. 4.5 hours, and it goes through every single aspect. So that's on the bonus disc. Plus, there is a brand new 96-minute sort of no way to make a living interview style documentary. Now, this was filmed during the pandemic, so it's all done through Zoom calls, but it features pretty much all the principal actors except for Michael J. Fox. There's no Peter Jackson, but you do hear stories that are not in that 4.5-hour documentary, kind of reflections on their characters. It is really interesting, and I'm so glad that Turbine Studios included that or created that. And I dare say if they weren't in a pandemic, it would have been a different documentary put on. But it's all done through Zoom calls, but it is very interesting. And that is basically all you get on that bonus disc. Now, the theatrical version disc only carries the theatrical version, and it has, DTS Master Audio 5.1. There is no audio commentary on that disc. I feel it's a missed opportunity where they could have actually brought in some filmmakers, historians, actors to do a commentary for the theatrical version, because there's not. And it's a missed opportunity. On the director's cut, just like on the Laserdisc, the DVD, that same commentary track by Peter Jackson is ported over onto the director's cut for this release. It is a really interesting listen to. He's kind of given behind the scenes snippets of stories, you know, of the filming of the sequences, and it is worth a listen. It's not the best commentary ever done, but it is interesting, but it's only available on the director's cut. The sound quality for this is the same as the 4K at the end of the day, although I do believe it's got Dolby Atmos on the 4K. Dolby Atmos is not present on this, it's just DTS Master Audio, but it is from that Dolby Atmos source where basically all the elements were remixed into a new Dolby Atmos soundtrack for the 4K release and then downmixed into this. The soundtrack is really good, like in terms of rear speakers, front speakers, clear dialogue. You hear the music clearly, you hear them talking, very atmospheric. Compared to the earlier version, say like the DVD that I'll have, it is a different mix because it was done by, you know, the editors at the time, whereas this was actually done by Turbine Studios. This faithfully recreates that Dolby Digital, or DTS, I think it had in cinemas, soundtrack. So obviously DTS and Master Audio DTS aren't the same thing, but it's faithfully recreated on here. No issues with the audio at all. Now, the picture quality, and I'm going to put some screenshots up here. I have a major issue with the release of this for the picture quality, and I do feel that the 4K is a total waste of time, because no matter if you're getting the theatrical cut, which was scanned at 4K off the negatives, it's still an upscale from 2K. If you've got the director's cut and you're watching that, it is a total upscale from the digital intermediate that was on the hard drives to the 4K disc. 4K version of the Frighteners, total waste of time. It's not a true 4K. But the Blu-ray version as well, it's an interesting version, I'd say, as opposed to perhaps the one that I'd go to all the time. Basically, because of the nature of the way it was filmed, remember we've got ghost footage filmed on blue screen and the live action elements, both filmed on 35mm, great. But in order to integrate it with the CGI stuff that was built in the computer at either 1K or 2K resolution, the 35mm prints were scanned at 2K into the computer to create a digital intermediate where all the digital compositing could take place for this film. As well as that, there were CGI elements created around the ghosts, their sort of illuminating aura, integrated into this footage, locked into a 2K digital intermediate for the theatrical version. That theatrical version, digitally 2K on the hard drive, was then optically printed to a 35mm negative, meaning on that negative is a locked resolution, a locked resolution of 2K. So when it played in theaters, it's on 35mm, but it's got 2K resolution inherent within it. So when Turbine Studios now scanned it at 4K, they were scanning a 2K 35mm, as opposed to a true 35mm, what could be captured without the 2K digital lock on it. I gotta say, the picture quality in terms of detail, it's the best I've ever seen. Like, it is so pin sharp compared to previous Laserdisc or Blu-rays. Very filmic, you know, but there is a major difference between the theatrical and the director's cut on my home reference system. The theatrical cut has this brightness to it, which I can only akin to coming from a 35mm scan. It does have a little bit of grain on it, but in terms of the brightness and contrast levels, it's a brighter picture compared to the director's cut, which has a darker appearance, but yet is still brighter beyond what it actually should be. Like, I saw this at the cinema, and I've had this many times on home media. I know exactly how it should look. The opening sequence and all the way up until a certain point in the film, I had this set at my reference level, and the film is way too bright, both on the theatrical and the director's cut. When I then tuned, and these screenshots are all from the director's cut, by the way. When I then tuned at this point to I believe it should be presented at, the contrast and the color looked a lot better and less washed out than previous. You know, I do believe Turbine Studios has basically graded it for 4K and then brought it down to Blu-ray, meaning that the brightness and contrast and color values are not accurately being displayed on the Blu-ray, because it was intended for a 4K expanded range, dynamic range, you know, disc. And so it is a little bit brighter than I remember. And a way to know that is the illumination of the ghosts. They're more grey-green in this release, as opposed to the bluey green in the original theatrical. The ghost aura was a lot sort of less colourful and brighter than I remember it in the theaters. Like I said, pin sharp detail. It's a great release in terms of a good presentation. Turning my brightness down a few notches just resolved everything, and it looked as it should. And I can enjoy this film, you know, in its best detail. Like, this is the best way, I believe, my opinion, to watch Frighteners, because the Frighteners film is a film sadly locked in 2K, much like the Phantom Menace. And so watching it in 4K is you're watching a 2K upscale. But watching it in Blu-ray, it's from that 2K, even though it was scanned at 4K, it's now being presented at 1080p. And I gotta say, the special effects actually still look okay on this version. Like, all the CGI stuff, which in 4K is going to look more standing out as ropey, whereas on this one, it's actually okay. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say what you're saying is absolute bollocks, mate. But the proof in the pudding is if you watch the end scene with that worm creature from hell, there are two different, like, versions, effectively, of that scene. Like, you watch it on the director's cut, and there is this anti-aliasing weird stuff going on, which you'll probably see more in 4K, or maybe not at all, but I definitely saw that on the director's cut. But on the theatrical version, there wasn't this anti-aliasing weirdness going on within that CGI. And I believe it's because the film grain on the theatrical cut was masking the upscale to scan downscale of the CGI. So the CGI is 2K. It was put on, you know, a digital intermediate 2K for the director's cut. It was then upscaled to 4K and then brought back down to 1080p. And there is this anti-aliasing in that scene on the director's cut. But on the theatrical cut, you don't see it. And I do believe it's because the 35mm grain is masking that anti-aliasing. So, in my opinion, the best version in this set to watch is the theatrical version. It's from a 35mm print, and it looks, for me, way better than the director's cut on this set. I will be reviewing the DVD version, which is basically the same as this, minus that new interview, in the future, and it will be very interesting to compare the screenshots. But let me know your thoughts. Which version have you got of the Frighteners? Which one do you enjoy? And what are your thoughts on the Frighteners home media release? Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time when I review another film. Take care. Bye-bye.